Hey, creative writing enthusiasts. So this week we're going to look at conflict. Now, conflict is necessary in all great stories. I mean, a story without conflict, it's kind of like a cake without sugar. It's not really a cake, right? If anything, it's like a piece of bread, a big chunk of bread that you probably wouldn't want to eat because there's no yeast in it. Unless you have like a big tub of frosting, you could pile it up. Anyway, so it just doesn't work. You need conflict in your stories. It kind of motivates the characters to step out of their comfort zone, like we talked about in that story triangle. That's the whole purpose of conflict. To take the character from the life that they were having, and it was nice, and it was okay, maybe it wasn't nice, but it takes them and it puts them even deeper, or it puts them in a different realm to where now they have to push against life and step out of their comfort zone to overcome this conflict. Now, the literary geniuses of the world have come up with 3 different types of conflict, and I'm going to talk about those briefly today. The first type of conflict is man versus man. Now, man versus man is where you may have characters pit against each other, or all the conflict occurs because of other characters in the main character's life. This would be an example of man versus man. Or man versus man could also include kind of man versus society. And an example of that would be if the character is really trying to push against a larger group or a larger idea or entity, like slavery or bullying. If all their conflict is occurring because of these larger groups, that would still be man versus man. It kind of falls under that. The next one is man versus nature. Now, man versus nature is anytime the character is taken out of their regular environment and put into a situation or another environment that is either life-threatening or just ultimately, though, it comes down to what makes them step out of their comfort zone, right? That could be minimal and that could be extreme, life-threatening, like I said. Like The Hatchet, if you've ever read that back in grade school or middle school. A boy, plane crash, and now he has to survive. That's man versus nature. Or it could be something as simple as a kid who becomes kind of a juvenile delinquent. He lives in the city, and as part of his probation time or community service time, he has to go to this farm outside of the city and volunteer and work there for a while as kind of retribution for his acts. And so now he's taken out of his environment that he's comfortable in and put into a country environment that is going to cause him a lot of conflict. Now, if the story is based around that's the focus of the conflict, that would be man versus nature. So now the last one is man versus self. Now, man versus self is obviously an internal conflict where all the struggles that are occurring with the character happen from within. This could be because the character has severe anxiety, or they're depressed, or they're extremely self-conscious in themselves. And so that means all the interactions that occur in their world, in the environment around them, they could be very simple and basic, but then everything kind of balloons, and everything kind of blossoms, and everything becomes interesting because the conflict occurs with how they are reacting to everything around them. So even though everything is simple and basic, it becomes interesting because of how it's told, through their perspective, through their eyes, because the conflict is within. So this week, you are actually going to read the short story, The Peacekeeper, by Alan Heathcock. Alan Heathcock, he was my creative writing professor at Boise State University. Now he's an award-winning author because he got a book published that won all sorts of critical acclaim and sold lots and lots of copies. They had to go through several editions, and all this happened just really quickly, just really recently, actually. And but he's an amazing writer. This story was featured in. This story was featured in Best American Mystery Stories. He didn't write this as a mystery, but apparently it was kind of acknowledged and thought of as a good mystery story as well. But he just wanted to write great fiction, and so it is great fiction. Now, the reason why I chose this for conflict is because the main character in the story literally goes through all 3 types of conflict in this short story, and it's your job this week, instead of writing just your usual blurb, I want you to identify the type of conflict that you feel, in your opinion, is the type of conflict that is showcased the most or the highest. Because even though the main character will go through each one of the three types of conflict, you may feel like one is more prominent than the rest. And so what I'd like you to do is give your argument as to why you think that, and then share some examples from the text that kind of support your claim. So that would mean just some examples of when the conflict of man versus man was included, or if you felt like man versus self was the biggest type of conflict, share some examples on why you felt that way. But literally, this is a fantastic story to showcase each and every one of the types of conflict, and I hope you enjoy it. It's one of my favorites. It's kind of graphic at times, but it's a good read. So let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.